Let's get ready to rumble!
Oh my God! Unbelievable! Down goes Frazier! Down goes
Frazier! It's time! You're listening to New Mexico's only mixed martial arts and boxing podcast, The Low Blow, on AtomCombatSports.com and Fight Fans Radio. It's episode 181 of The Low Blow on Fight Fans Radio, USCombatSports.com, and SouthwestFight.com. I am Justin Goodrum, joined by Jorge Hernandez. Welcome back home, man.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it, man. Are you excited as I am that Little Boosie is out of jail?
He is. He told me about that. I forgot who he is. He had to enlighten me on who is Little Boosie. Please.
No, come on. He used to rock him, man. Wipe Me Down was one of his best tracks, I think, man.
That's right.
He killed the verse on that track. So I'm excited that music is back and going to give me a lot of energy.
Well, hopefully he it might give a lot of people a lot of energy just listening to that. Listening to the fights this weekend, because it's a big weekend of fights all over the place, in MMA and boxing, and of course kickboxing as well. On today's show, we're going to discuss Canelo Alvarez versus Alfredo Angulo. We're going to run down the controversy of the TRT ban in mixed martial arts. And we have a special guest. Hopefully we're going to get him on the show here, Kareem Mayfield, who's fighting later this month. We're hopefully going to have him on the show. Could be calling in any second now, so please stay tuned for that interview. As always, you can contact us through our social media outlets, starting off with YouTube, youtube.com/lowblow505 with your YouTube comments. We had videos of all covering all over the combat sports spectrum in the Southwest. The latest videos, of course, of Bob Foster, about a 7-minute and 45-second interview with the great world champion, boxing legend Bob Foster. Please go check that out. Really worth your time there. Always, you can get in touch with Fight Fans Radio through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. Just typing in Fight Fans Radio. And of course, we're on Twitter as well, at The Low Blow. Also, you can always give us an email, lowblow505@gmail.com. So, man, we're going to do things a little bit differently here, if you don't mind, because we're waiting for this Kareem Mayfield interview. I kind of want to get into this TRT discussion with you, if you don't mind. Basically, this is a big story that took place over the past couple of weeks. It all started with the ESPN article that went down, partly written by Josh Gross, stating the negative effects of testosterone replacement therapy. And then Nevada had their meeting banning TRT as well. California has followed suit. Their athletic commission has also banned TRT. The repercussions are as follows. Vitor Belfort put out of this fight against Chris Weidman. So now Leo Machida has taken his place. Now there's doubts as to whether or not Vitor Belfort will continue his career. Also, we're hearing rumors about Chael Sonnen. Will his career be over because he can't use TRT? I guess, man, just your thoughts on this, because it kind of reminds me a lot of kind of the steroid scandal, just in terms of how impactful really these drugs are in terms of performance. I'll never forget Javier Mendez was doing a podcast with Mauro Ranallo, and he mentioned that he used the TRT when he was on it. He felt spectacular, and he just felt great when he was on it, but when he fell off of it, he could notice a decrease in performance. And this, with Javier, he's a coach now with AKA, he's not really an athlete. He noticed a huge difference being on a drug and being off of it. So I just want to get your opinion on terms of, first, do you think this is a good thing for the sport that TRT's gone? And also, if you can comment, I guess, the repercussions starting out with Vitor Belfort and then Chael Sonnen.
Well, that was huge, especially because of, both guys are huge, just because of how big the fight between Weidman and Vitor Belfort was going to be. Vitor Belfort has turned his career around, about the last year and a half or whatever it may be that he's been on this streak. And Chael is, one of the best guys to, run his mouth into a big fight, and thus bringing a whole new demographic of fight fans, I feel. And this is obviously going to hurt that. You're taking out one of the most known fighters, I guess, through history, meaning Vitor Belfort, ever since, the infancy of MMA here, and whether it be in Japan or in South America or even here in North America. And especially, I mean, it hurts with Chael just because this is the time, right about this time is where the UFC is struggling to get a pay-per-view star. And if they can get an exciting guy like Vitor Belfort to draw numbers, then that's great for them, especially with this, I guess, I mean, we're almost entering, I shouldn't say a pay-per-view ice age for them, but it kind of feels that way to where they're looking for that next big star besides Rousey and Jones, of course, with GSP being out and Silva, on the downside of his career. But for this to kick in when it did now, it's going to do a lot for the UFC, and I think it's going to hurt in a negative way because of the fighters that were benefiting from it and the excitement that they did bring. But it's a performing enhancing, I guess, treatment that these guys are getting, and a lot of them do need it to have a good playing field. But a lot of these guys are getting TRT and performing better than these other guys that are coming in all natural. And I think, and I don't think that's fair. So I think for TRT to be removed completely, I think it's the right decision. I'm not sure how you feel about it.
I agree. First, before I give my opinion on it, let me read you some comments. The Nevada State Athletic Commission chairman, Francisco Aguilar, had this to say: I would encourage the ABC to look into this issue for all commissions in all states across the country. I think it's important that there be a standard, and I think it is not afraid to set that standard. The NAC is not afraid to set that standard. Dana White said this: we will follow Nevada. It's a great day for the sport. I applaud the NSAC. TRT needed to go away. I agree with you, Jorge. I think, it's long overdue. I think the issue with this TRT is now how are these commissions going to enforce it? I mentioned his name a lot, but I think he has made some good points, and that's Luke Thomas at MMAfighting.com. And he basically said with these athletic commissions, they might as well be the DMV. I mean, just in terms of how they enforce these, I mean, they don't have the correct equipment, the money involved to really enforce this. So, sure, with Nevada, with California, they got the money to test these guys up and down, but these guys fight all over the world, and there's just a huge question mark in terms of, okay, is every commission going to test for your higher testosterone? Is every commission going to do the carbon isotope test that's been heralded within the MMA media being the best way of finding these testosterone levels? I heard that's really expensive to really pull off that testing. And so another question you have to ask is with the UFC, when they go overseas, what type of testing are they doing with testosterone? I mean, now these guys aren't getting the exemption. Are they just going to test them? Okay, if you're over 2-1, are you finished in terms of, you're punished because you're 2-1 with your testosterone ratio. So I just think it's a little bit of a gray area as in terms of with these commissions, are they going to test and are they going to not? I think your other point, Jorge, is correct. The UFC is hurting for mainstream stars to cross over with casual fans. And I think, a lot of the time, us covering the sport, we kind of take it for granted as you create a star in combat sports, right? You're like, okay, UFC, go create stars. Well, how exactly do you do that? I mean, how did the UFC create Chuck Liddell as a star? I mean, did they tell Chuck to shave his head into a mohawk? Did they tell Chuck Liddell to get tattoos on the side of his head? I mean, the same thing with Tito. Did they tell Tito, okay, be the most annoying, obnoxious, bad guy in the UFC you could possibly can? No, they didn't. These are these guys' personality. This is what they just act like. And the same thing goes for Ronda Rousey. I mean, Ronda Rousey was just as, controversial and just as outspoken when she was on Joe Rogan's podcast years ago before no one knew who she was. She's the same way now. And that just, with her personality, it connects with people. Whereas other people who are introverted and just do not want to do the media, they just don't get exposed. And I think right now we're in that phase of, a lot of stars retiring, a lot of transition, a lot of guys getting older. I mean, with this TRT thing, keep in mind, a lot of guys using this are older fighters that maybe should be considering retiring. So guys like Dan Henderson, been around the sport a long time. Chael Sonnen, Vitor Belfort, the poster boy of this whole controversy, all older guys. So it's not like this TRT thing's, okay, now John Jones, his career is over because he can't use TRT. He was never on TRT. Neither was, Johnny Hendricks, Carlos Condit. Some of the younger guys in the sport, they're not on this drug. So I think, it's going to hurt the UFC because a lot of their older stars that they're kind of relying upon to carry these cards, they're going to be gone, but at the same time, it's kind of a natural progression of the sport. So I just think overall, maybe it'll force the UFC to really look in the mirror in terms of cutting down the cards that they're running.
No, and you're completely right. It's just I want to see how Vitor comes back from this. I don't know how long he's going to be out, or how this will have any effect in Brazil. Maybe we will only see Vitor Belfort fight twice a year, and that's going to be in Brazil.
That would seem so sketchy, though, right? Wouldn't you think? I mean, the UFC has been...
Yeah, it would. I completely agree with you.
I mean, Dana White's been kind of wishy-washy, but lately he's been cracking down on the TRT issue. Now it looks like you're basically protecting him if he fights in Brazil. And even then, you have to test him now because they're following Nevada. So, that's out the window fighting in any other country because the UFC, they stated on the record they're following Nevada. So that means he can't use TRT in the UFC anywhere. So he's virtually screwed.
Yeah. Do you think he's done, or do we see him maybe a couple more times? Or what do you think we're going to see out of Vitor?
Well, I don't know if I'm right about this, but when he fought Rich Franklin, and even the fight after, I think it might have been against Anthony Johnson. I think with Rich Franklin particularly, he wasn't on TRT, I don't think. And maybe he was on it and no one knew what it was and he wasn't popular. That's why no one talked about it. But you see his body change when he fought at 185, fighting Rich Franklin to when he destroyed Luke Rockhold. I mean, that's a huge difference in his body type. So to me, if he was truly off of this stuff before, his big run, maybe he comes back. Right now he's in a good position to maybe at least try. I think for him just to retire, not using this stuff would be a damning statement to his legacy. And with his ego, I just don't think he would totally feel comfortable leaving the sport knowing that he was the number one contender and he would just quit just because TRT is not available. Mm-hmm. I just don't think he would do that. But you never know.
Sure, no.
Just moving on real quickly here to some other news. In particularly, Mac Danzig, he's retired from the sport. He's had a 13-year career. I remember when he was, one of the hottest fighters in the lightweight division. Just ran into a losing streak. Now he's retired. What are your thoughts on Mac Danzig? I don't think he even challenged for the title, but certainly a guy near kind of title contention, but never could really become the number one contender. Very similarly to Joe Lozon. They're kind of both in that kind of vein. What are your thoughts on Mac Danzig?
No, and I completely agree. He was one of the fighters that I actually didn't mind, seeing. But you think of fighters there in the middle of the pack where it's MMA or boxing. Some of these guys will go down in memory of a lot of these fans for a while, despite the fact that they never won a championship. And I think he's one of them. One of the guys, one of the guys from here in New Mexico, the original Golden Boy from Belen, Art Aragon, is a similar fighter. He was always fighting some tough fights, very interesting. So I think similar to that, he'll go down in memory of a lot of these hardcore fans, or even hardcore MMA historians, I think.
Mm-hmm. Looks like Matthew Macklin, and I believe, trying to get his name correct here, Andy Lee. I almost called him David Lee of the Golden State Warriors. I was really close, but it's Andy Lee. Looks like they're both set to battle April 26th. This is a result of Gennady Golovkin's father passing away. And first, before you break down the fight, do you think this will affect Gennady Golovkin's career with his father passing away? I mean, we've seen all over sports. We've seen some athletes respond incredibly by having incredible performance, and we've seen and we really see some other issues in terms of fighters and athletes having difficulty here. What do you think is going to happen with Golovkin?
I don't know. With Golovkin, I think he's going to take some time off. Obviously, this is what he needs, and it's part of the Ukrainian tradition to wait, 40 days to engage in anything, whether it be work or any of that, whether it be as he is an entertainer as far as boxing. So, we probably won't see him till late summer, man. So we're gonna try Kareem Mayfield one more time here. If he doesn't answer, we'll move on with the rest of the show. It's normal, so. like the phone a friend on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Jay.
It is the lifeline, right?
Yeah. Well, guess we can drop the call. Looks like he's not available.
Okay, no worries. Sorry about that. Hopefully he knows our number, so hopefully he'll give us a call back. Maybe we can just keep yapping here until he gives us a call back, man.
And we were talking about Gennady Golovkin, and it's really hard. You have a lot of these guys that are very religious or very specific, especially when you deal with the sport that's worldwide, like mixed martial arts and boxing. Jay, you'll see a lot of these traditions come into play, and I think that's a beauty. Despite the fact that he's not that he's not fighting because of these 40 days, I think it's the beauty of the sports. You get to see the traditions that all these other people have. I would much rather see him fight within those next 40 days, but I mean, you have to give the guy the respect, especially because he's respecting his own tradition and his own values and not doing anything. I shouldn't say anything, but with regards to mourning for 40 days.
Mm-hmm. What about the fight that we're going to see? Of course, a lot of boxing fans disappointed that we won't see Triple G back in action, but in terms of seeing Macklin and Andy Lee, what are your thoughts on this fight?
I think I expect it to be a pretty fun fight between the two guys. You got, Matthew Macklin. Both of these guys are hard-nosed dudes, so you're going to see, I think, a pretty entertaining fight out of them. It's not, if you're waiting to see anything technical, I don't think this is the fight for you. If you want to see some hard-nosed, just blue-collar guys going at it, this is definitely it. And both guys are from out in Northern Europe, so they know how to bring it, and I think it's going to be an exciting fight between two middleweights that if you ask me, a lot of people think they're boring, but to me, this fight just matches two blue-collar guys to just go to war against each other, to try to remain relevant in that middleweight division where you can easily get lost because of some of because of all the international talent. I mean, the two guys that we're talking about right now are from out in the UK, England, and also Ireland. So and then you talk about Gennady Golovkin, another international guy. You have another guy in there by the name of Kit Chocolate, Peter Quillen in the U.S. If you ask me, this weight class is at one of the most international besides the heavyweight class.
Mm-hmm. I guess, man, we should discuss this rumor that's going around, and I don't know if you heard this or not, about Ronda Rousey and possibly Gina Carano. Apparently last week, Joe Rogan was on a local radio station claiming that there's some big announcement concerning Ronda Rousey. Now, it could be Ronda Rousey's in some new movie. It could be that she's flying to Mars. We don't really know. But all points point to her next fight against a huge opponent, whether it's Gina Carano, whether it's Cyborg, Holly Holm's name's been thrown in there. And I guess the thought is, I wanted to ask you this. Is it possible for even one of these women, I'm talking about Cyborg and Carano, to even make 135? Because we've seen them struggle on the scale. We even heard, I think, Cyborg referring to she would have to die to make 135, something like that. I mean, is it even possible? I mean, I don't get why people are getting so hyped up. I mean, these women barely made 145. I mean, how is it possible for them to make 135?
I guess if the money talks, Jay, if they get more than triple figures and they're willing to, I guess, put their body through that kind of torture, then by all means have at it. But I just don't understand, especially letting the way Joe Rogan let it slide on some random, sports talk show. It's just really weird how this came about. And Jay, I don't know if you know this. It's kind of weird to me how local radio here in Albuquerque is playing out. I told you earlier that 1017 was going to have Daniel Cormier today, and then next week they have Dana White. So that just makes me think, are they going to announce something with Holly? What the heck is going on? Are they thinking of bringing a UFC here to Albuquerque? It's just really strange with what is currently going on nationally with them, I guess, Joe Rogan letting something slide out. He said something without really saying something with regards to Ronda Rousey, and especially what's going on here locally. I seriously doubt it's something to do with Holly Holm, but just of what's going on, what I've mentioned, what's going on here nationally and then here locally, it's just kind of strange the timing that all of this is going down.
Yeah, it is weird. One thing with the women, I guarantee you, Jorge, I'll go on record. I guarantee you that, and this might be kind of an insane prediction, neither woman will make 135. No chance. No chance at all. Maybe Cyborg, maybe. And that's just because she's been active. But Gina Carano, I'll put it on record. I'll bet anything, Jorge, anything on the line. There's no way Gina Carano's making 135.
What if it's a catch weight at 140? Do you think the UFC would ever do that?
Possibly. I mean, at the same time, what's the value? I mean, what? You're in a situation like Takanori Gomi, in which she's going to create a new weight class, 140. I mean, especially for Gina Carano, who's not even committed to the sport. I mean, this is a woman you've heard on several interviews that she's not really. She didn't like punching people in the face. It bugged her. Like, she didn't like hurting people. So that's number one. Number two is this movie career. She's in a lot of good movies. She's in a new movie coming up. I forgot what it's called, but I don't know if you've seen the trailer. She's in some vacation movie where she's the star and she's killing people and kicking ass. You know how she does, but she's the star, and that's going to be in theaters. And she's been in, Fast and Furious. She was on Almost Human, the TV show. So her acting career is taken off pretty decently. I just don't see I don't see the point of her making a return to a sport that made her uncomfortable. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't get the sense that she was fully passionate in becoming a champion like Ronda Rousey is. Like, Ronda, I believe, wants to be the champion. That's what she wants to do. Like, the movies, it's cool. But being the champ and being this, legend is really important to her. I don't think Gina Carano really cares about that.
Yeah. And I was going to say, just very quickly, you mentioned Takanori Gomi. UFC 172 is taking on one of the guys that we've previously had on the low blow and Isaac Valley Flag. So that's a pretty decent fight. And it's one of the first fights on that UFC 172 card that's shaping up to be a pretty decent card. So I had to drop that. But one thing and one question for you. Will Gina Carano become the female Liam Neeson?
Well, Liam Neeson is more talkative, and Liam Neeson's older. So that would pretty much mean that it's weird, because really Liam Neeson's action career took off when he was older, right? I think. Yeah. So she would have to disappear for like 20 years and then come back and then start kicking ass. So maybe, I don't know. I mean, she's not really the person I suspect likes, the limelight and the attention. So I don't know. But I want to comment on your comments about this UFC New Mexico, because we've had guests on the show discussing this, and it's something that I still do not understand in terms of the university arena here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the pit, not having the facilities to host a UFC. And I still don't understand that, because you have to imagine the UFC travels everywhere, and you have to imagine that each arena is not perfectly set to their arena standards. So for something like Albuquerque, or a city like Albuquerque, to be automatically blackballed and not hosting a UFC because of the arena seems very bizarre to me. I mean, it's a 15,000-seat arena. I think you have plenty of local fighters. Pretty easy to sell it out here, considering not only the local fans, but certainly fans that travel. It just seems fairly bizarre that there has not been a UFC here. I mean, we heard the excuses, Nevada's right next door, but I just don't understand the logic of not bringing a big show here.
No, and neither do I.
It seems fairly bizarre.
Even if it's a fight night, Jay, how a fight night at least hasn't happened here is just beyond me. It just doesn't make sense. Think about it. I mean, what big fight would they have here? I brought this up to you earlier. I asked you, do you think they would ever do Jones versus Cormier here? Do you think that would happen as a main event, and then Conde and maybe Holly Holm under it?
It's a great card. I think that's just too big of a card for them to bring here. Yeah. I think they just force people, we can just do it at the Mandalay Bay, that's a huge card. I mean, that'd be, especially you mentioned, the UFC struggling to make stars. I mean, that'd probably be one of the biggest cards of the year. I don't know if they want to bring it to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I mean, you know how the perception of this city is, whether you like it or not. I think it'd be like, okay, we're going to this town that's really not that popular on the scope of the national map. But at the same time, it would be a card which you can kind of position as, Jackson's MMA, kind of take it on the world. So if you frame it correctly, I guess it's possible for casual fans to accept. I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of a weird situation.
We'll see. I mean, when is this supposed big deal supposed to be made? This whole Ronda Rousey, Joe Rogan, rumor. When is it supposed to be laid to rest? Did they mention it? Did they give a specific timeline to put it to rest?
I heard, maybe this week, supposedly. I mean, you know how that goes. Dana White's like, yeah, some big announcement next week, and it comes 3 weeks later. I mean, we don't know. I mean, the deal's probably not done yet, in Dana White speak. So we really don't know what is really going on here. My guess is that Ronda's on a break. She's been fighting frequently. She wants some time to chill. My assumption is we won't hear anything about Ronda. Maybe you save it for the next UFC, the one, in a couple of weeks here in March, featuring for the welterweight title. Maybe you make an announcement on that card for late summer. So that's something we should keep in mind. Now, one more UFC note I didn't want to mention to you, Jorge, and that's Gilbert Melendez. And I don't know if we've discussed this, him re-signing with the UFC, him getting a deal where he gets to coach the Ultimate Fighter, using the leverage of Bellator to his advantage to get a bigger deal with the UFC. Just your thoughts on not only, Gilbert Melendez, returning to the UFC, getting a title shot against Anthony Pettis, but number one, him fighting, in December, so that's a huge layoff. Number two, Bellator becoming a player in terms of them getting higher ranked fighters. And what are your thoughts on this situation?
This is where he belongs. I think he belongs in the UFC. He's one of my favorite fighters, and I think he deserves to, be in with the elite class. We talked about him so much when he was in Strikeforce and wanting to see how he actually did against the other 155-pounders in the UFC. And I think we have yet to see what he can, fully do. He hasn't had too many fights with the UFC here. Let's not forget. So for the UFC to re-sign him, I think it's a great idea, especially because of the fact he brought you one of the most exciting fights last year when he took on Diego Sanchez. Remember how crazy Dana White was after that fight? And he even said, oh my God, we had a Mexican world war in here in here tonight. And if he has that, and that's truly a demographic that he wants to hit, he needs a face like Gilbert Melendez, someone who's actually elite and a Mexican-American fighter to be able to jump, into that demographic. And I know I bring it up a lot, but it's obvious. It's it's a booming population that's happening. The median age is 27 years old. That is the perfect demographic to buy these pay-per-views, Justin.
I agree with you. Of course, Mexico is a market that the UFC has been looking to penetrate, but the issue is, of course, Cain Velasquez being hurt. And so you have to ask yourself, as much as potential as Gilbert Melendez has, Cain Velasquez is the focus of what the UFC wants to use to enter Mexico for a big card there. I think Gilbert Melendez could be the second guy, on there, on their kind of stars, trying to be the, standard barriers of trying to carry the promotion in Latin America. We'll have to wait and see. But I just think this is terrible that this fight we have to wait till December to see this. I think that just hurts, both these guys, Anthony Pettis and Gilbert Melendez. I think that just hurts their, overall stock in terms of their popularity. And not to mention that it really ices the lightweight division. I mean, take a look at a guy like TJ Grant. He has to wait till 2015 to get a title shot. I just think it just totally, locks everything down for a really long time.
It definitely does. And I wanted to bring up something crazy that I was telling you before we came on board, and it has to do with the Canelo Alvarez pay-per-view card. And I guess we can break down the fight here shortly. But
sure.
With regards to the fact that Carlos Molina, who is, of course, defeated Ishii Smith for one of the junior middleweight titles, he's supposed to take on Jamal Charlo from Houston, Texas. If you guys don't know, the Charlos, they're twin brothers. They both fight in the 154-pound division, and they're both undefeated. Very talented guys. Carlos Molina and Jamal Charlo are supposed to fight Saturday at the MGM Grand, and this card, the undercard, is going to hell, Jay, just because of what's happening. One, with, of course, Carlos Molina. He's actually incarcerated. Apparently, he didn't register as a sex offender back in 2001 when he was 18 years old. According to to his attorney, he apparently got arrested for statutory rape, for having sex with a 15 or 16-year-old is what the attorney says.
Wow.
And once they posted bond, guess what? They found out that Carlos Molina has an immigration hold on him. Carlos Molina, who was born in Mexico but has been living in the United States since he was 4 years old, apparently isn't a full-on citizen yet. So, it just keeps getting worse on this pay-per-view card for Golden Boy, I should say. But see, here's the thing about Golden Boy. They don't try to sell you on the undercards ever. It's always the main event. And before all of this string of bad luck, him getting arrested, it was a decent undercard up until this point. And you're losing a championship title fight from this pay-per-view card that, one, is difficult to sell because both Canelo and Alfredo Angulo in the main event are coming off of losses. So to me, this is just a crazy story, Jay. I mean, you think you're done with – you think you're going to be out of jail and all of a sudden you realize there's an immigration hold? I mean, obviously here in this country, neither of us will ever go through it. But, I mean, goodness, it's just a string of bad luck with this guy. But it sounds like it's all his fault.
Yeah, it's just pretty terrible, and really, it's kind of the fault of Golden Boy. You would think that somehow they would know that this would be happening there to take care of these issues. The UFC was very aggressive. I think you remember Mark Hunt had the immigration issues, if you remember that, and they took care of that. So I just think it's kind of a lack of kind of institutional control. I mean, certainly the sex offender allegations, those you can't really control, but certainly him being a citizen. One way or another, that should be taken care of before he fights on pay-per-view.
By someone, I mean, by his manager, but even by his parents. Like, hey, dude, you might want to take care of that before you might go to jail. It's just unbelievable how this happened, and the whole statutory rape. I know Mark Cuban was a big proponent of this. I think it was in Georgia. This is a quick story, an NBA story, but. There was a young man, I can't remember his name, in Georgia who got arrested for the same thing. While he was in jail, they ended up passing this law, and Mark Cuban tried to help get this guy out of jail, but passing this law that if you're within an age, a graduating class of whoever you're sleeping with, that it's okay. And and to me that kind of makes sense. So for this, I guess I'm not exactly sure where this happened to Molina, but I mean, it'd be good to take a look at the law and see if they can maybe even get that reversed. But again, that gets lawyers involved and gets Golden Boy to spend a lot of money in one of their fighters that might not make money again. And very quickly, Jay, this is the second co-main event that's fallen through for this pay-per-view card. Omar Figueroa, who's one of the most exciting lightweights in the world, he's actually from Texas. He was supposed to fight in the co-main event. He hurt his hand about 3 weeks, a month before the fight, and now you're having this one fall out. It's just it's a pay-per-view card in general that's being fallen out. But I think as of right now, the people who are going to buy it, we're going to buy it either way because of Canelo. They may have lost only a handful, and I think I'm one of them. I don't know if I'll buy this pay-per-view, Jay.
Interesting. What about Leo Santa Cruz versus Christian Melendez? Looks like Santa Cruz is certainly a huge favorite. Minus 1,200. With Melendez plus 700. And it looks like Bad Left Hook, they rated the fights. What's currently the undercard. Who knows what it's going to be tomorrow. But looks like they have 7 out of 10 for the matchup, 6.5 out of 10 for the action. Do you agree with that? Is this a fight to pay attention to or to skip?
The Christian Mijares and Leo Santa Cruz, I think it's a fight that that people should be looking at, just because Christian Mijares has worked his way up the ladder. Like, the first time he really caught my eye is when he actually defeated Jorge Arce in a landslide. They fought back in 2007 in the Alamodome, and Mijares was already the super flyweight champion, but Arce was coming in. He was a hot name. He was streaking at that time, and Mijares it was a mismatch. I think the closest, I'm looking at the scores now, 119-109 and 117-111. That was just a landslide victory by him. He did have a little bit of a losing streak, losing to Victor Chinian and another guy there for 3 fights in a row. But since since 2009, this guy's only lost one fight. He's something like, I think, 12-1 in his last 13 fights, and Mijares brings it. So, and Leo Santa Cruz, so this might be one of the better fights on that card. But I'm a big guy. For people that don't know, I'm a big Jorge Linares guy. He's a Venezuelan living in Japan. He's fighting Nahito Arakawa. So if you guys don't remember Nahito, he fought Omar Figueroa in what was one of the best fights of the year last year. So Linares' technical skill. Linares, to me, is one of the top 5 technically sound guys, but he just doesn't have the chin to put him up there as one of the top pound-for-pound guys. So that is a very interesting fight. And who knows, Leo Santa Cruz and the Jorge Linares fight might end up saving this pay-per-view.
Well, interesting enough, the main event, certainly with Canelo and Angulo, both guys coming off losses. Canelo set to make $1 million and some change in terms of the revenue. Angulo is set to make $750K on this fight. Both guys coming off the loss. Certainly Golden Boy has more invested in Canelo Alvarez. For Angulo to win this fight, would that pretty much end kind of the hype train for Canelo? I mean, this is a must-win fight for Canelo Alvarez. I mean, he can't lose this fight. What are the chances that Canelo gets upsetted by Angulo in this fight?
I don't think it's a very good one. I don't think we've ever seen Canelo Alvarez's chin really tested. Seems like he has a pretty damn sturdy chin. We've seen Alfredo Angulo dropped and hurt several times. Most memorable, James Kirkland, despite being down early in their fight, he came back and slugged it out with him. Alvarez is a little more technical than James Kirkland, so I think we're going to see. I think a lot of people expect a war between these two guys, but I think this fight is actually a pretty good match for Alvarez to practice a lot of his technique, just because Angulo is kind of a come straight forward fight. But I don't think this will be a boring fight. Both of these guys are head on, and just because they're both coming up losses and they need this fight bad, it's going to be fairly entertaining, I feel. And a few bombs are going to get dropped. Someone's getting knocked out, and I think it's going to be Angulo somewhere in the 6th or 7th round. He's going to get stopped. That's my prediction.
Well, Canelo, correct me if I'm wrong, has some really good technique with body shots.
Yes,
that's certainly a possibility for him maybe to drop Angulo with a body shot late in the fight.
I think so, especially if he's able to work, the head. If you remember, the Erislandy Lara fight with Alfredo Angulo. Alfredo Angulo had one of the worst hematomas over his left eye that I think I have ever seen in boxing. I mean,
is Rockman bad?
It was. If Rockman's a 10, Alfredo Angulo's was an 8.5. It was pretty close. It was Scottie Pippen 1997 Utah Jazz playoffs bad, where Scottie Pippen looked like a cartoon. I remember when he caught one right to an elbow to the top of the forehead. But I think we're going to see problems with Angulo's eyes swollen here, and I don't think Angulo, despite the fact that I like him and these pre-fight the prime times or whatever you call them on a Showtime. The first episode was fairly exciting. I've yet to see the second one, but I'll definitely catch it because the first one was enjoyable, and it brought Fredo Angulo. You feel for the guy. Showtime, the editors of the show did an excellent job just trying to make you feel for Angulo since he is the underdog. But Alvarez, he's going to be a pay-per-view draw. He's what, 23 years old, Jay? Could you imagine? We're going to hear 10 more years about this guy at least.
Well, certainly, a lot of times, the younger fighter, often it's a positive no matter if they win or lose being placed in a big pay-per-view. So certainly it's a big matchup. Certainly for boxing, the first big show of the year. Certainly, hopefully it'll be a competitive bout. I'm looking forward to seeing that this weekend. I want to get your thoughts, Jorge. Bellator last week, them making their return to television with a doubleheader of big fights with Quentin Rampage Jackson and Kimo Laral in the light heavyweight tournament. Both guys in the opposite sides of the bracket. Both guys getting the victory with Laral getting a unanimous decision victory over Mikhail Zayats, and then Quentin Jackson beating Christian Impumbu in the first round. I don't know if you saw the scuffle that took place afterwards. Both guys getting into it. At the post-fight press conference. These guys are certainly entertaining. We all know about the video with them in the van and them going to Walmart and them almost fighting in the minivan there. But I guess, what are your thoughts on this in terms of these two guys carrying a pay-per-view? It's pretty much set in stone that the third match between Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler is set to go down for Bellator's first pay-per-view. There's rumors that Quentin Jackson and King Lawal could end up as the co-main event. What are your thoughts on this matchup? Are you interested in this matchup, or do you think both guys are past their prime and this is just, a fight that's basically based in a grudge match?
Yeah, entertainment's entertainment, and for entertainment value, I'm going to watch that fight. And to be honest, you talk about Eddie Alvarez and Michael Chandler. If that were on a pay-per-view by itself, I would probably buy it. I'm not going to lie. I mean, the two fights that they've had, I think. I'd argue it with people to death, but they're two fights I think are top 25 all time that I've ever seen, at least.
Sure.
So I definitely want to see a pay-per-view with them. As far as Rampage and King Mo, I think this fight would have really intrigued me if it happened 3 years ago when these guys had a legitimate beef. Do you think any of the scuffling that they have now is for real, just because we saw the guys make up on I can't remember what random interview they were on YouTube and they finally buried the hatchet, but all of this scuffling, do you think they legitimately have a beef?
Well, both guys have a very similar personality. Quentin Jackson, if we're being honest here, is very, I don't know, in terms of his personality based on what we've seen in the MMA media, he's very temperamental. I mean, one side of him, he's very happy with you. The next side, he hates your guts. I mean, we've seen that whole saga with Ariel Helwani, him wanting to kill Ariel Helwani and then him being the best of friends with Ariel Helwani in Japan. So, particularly with these two guys, I mean, yeah, they squashed their beef, but they're certainly not good enough friends to which we can have suspicions of this rivalry being fake. Both these guys have a lot of pride. I know that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but it's true. Both these guys have a big ego. I'm sure King Mo feels a little bit somewhat angry that they brought in Quentin Jackson, at least in terms of having the same deal with him going into with TNA Wrestling, him having the dual deal with both Bellator and TNA Wrestling. I'm sure he feels a way about that. So I think the positive for King Mo is that now he has a big-time opponent to fight. But I think, both guys, once they start talking, it's on. I mean, all that goes out the window. So I'm sure, the whole scenario, how reality shows are, right? Where, the situation is manufactured in terms of, okay, these two people meet in a coffee shop. In reality, the producers tell them to meet in a coffee shop. But the fight and what takes place in that coffee shop, could be real because, you put two people in a volatile situation. Those two people would never meet in a coffee shop in a real life situation. But because they're on the show and they really do hate each other, in the coffee shop, they're going to fight. So the same thing with Jackson and Lawal, put those guys in the octagon or in the cage, they probably told them, this is going to happen. But anything that takes place, while it happens, you're creating that circumstance. You create the scenario and hopefully, you get good television out of it.
What's going to be better? Can the build up to the fight be better than the fight, or can the fight itself be better than the build-up? Because you're going to run into some hilarious just sound bites and quotes from both of these guys, man. Do you think it's going to...
Yeah, their press conference was hilarious. It was just pure gold. And I think you're right, man. I just think once the fight happens, you'll get a lot, this very similar scenario with Rampage and Rashad Evans, two guys that are afraid to lose to each other. I think... You'll see a little bit more fisticuffs. I think it'll be a lot more heavier striking compared to Rampage and Rashad. But I still think in the end of the day, it'll become a wrestling match of, okay, you can't take me down. I'll take you down. And it'll end up in a stalemate. Or one guy will get a takedown. One guy will get top position. The other guy won't be able to get up. And I think a lot of fans will be disappointed, to be honest.
And as far as entertainment value, and we didn't touch base on this, but Anthony Perez and Gilbert Melendez are going to be the coaches on Tough 20. And we're going to have. Looks like we have a guest on the line. Kareem, is that you?
It's me, man. I'm sorry I had to finish all my workout.
No worries. Kareem Hard Hitter Mayfield, 18-0, joining us on March 29th. He'll take on Thomas Delorme. How are you, man?
I'm doing well, man. Just finished getting it in, putting in that hard work.
And ranked number 7 right now by the WBO, and you got to fight against Thomas Delerme. Tell us how training is going for that big HBO fight you got at the end of the month.
Yeah, it's going well, man. Been getting great world-class sparring with, the likes of, all the guys that's in the gym for the most part. And, who's in the camp, man. We got Berto, we got Amir Khan, we got Antonio Johnson, which was a great amateur that was on a hiatus. He's like 10-1, but a great amateur, good work. Ideal for what I'm working with. I'm working with Alan Sanchez. Just switching it up, southpaws, unorthodox guys, fast guys, strong guys, the whole nine, man. To prepare me for March 29th.
Yeah, now Thomas Delerme, he was coming in as a hot prospect the last couple of years, and then he ended up dropping a contest here at the end of 2012. But since he's gone 4-0, what do you see out of Thomas?
He's a fast fighter, strong, young, hungry. Puerto Rican fighter, and he's coming with a game plan.
Now this is you're back on national TV. What's it like to be back on HBO? How excited are you?
Well, it's definitely a good thing. I've won all my fights. I've been waiting and wondering when HBO was gonna put me back on. You see, it was crazy to see Herrera actually get offered a fight for a world title fight, and I had just beat the guy, and I'm like, this guy fighting on network television. I'm like, what's really going on? They talking about calling out fighters. I was going to be calling out HBO. You know what I mean? But nevertheless, I'm back on network television, and I plan on standing on it.
And talking about calling out fighters, you have called out one of the guys that most people do not want to fight, and Danny Garcia. Is obviously, since you're now with Top Rank, is that a fight that's outside of your scope since he's a Golden Boy fighter now?
Well, we know the Cold War that's been going on with Golden Boy and Top Rank, but nevertheless, that's definitely a fight I'd like to have, ideally. But hopefully if they can squash their beef, we can mix up make it a Golden Rank, man. Study Top Rank, Golden Boy, make it a Golden Rank, and make some great possible fights happen.
Kareem, this is Justin. I saw your videos online calling out Danny Garcia. I thought they were really cool. What was the inspiration of creating these videos? Because they're pretty entertaining. What was the inspiration of going on YouTube and calling out Danny Garcia like that?
Well, it's the boxing historians know, and not even only boxing historians. The basic boxing fans know that this is something that's been done, in the past, and nowadays it's just the promoters beefing with the promoters, and it's not no real actual, beef. You see a little pushing and shoving at the press conference, but other than that, it's no guys really calling each other out. So, I kind of went old school on them. I didn't go as far as Muhammad Ali is pulling up with a school bus and pulling out a bullhorn and calling a sucker out, you know what I mean? But it was something on that level, and it was something that likes, people say, oh, I thought it was unclassy. I'm like, come on, man. First of all, what part of boxing is classy? And then second of all, it's something that's been done in the past. And, I wasn't disrespectful. I didn't use vulgar language or what have you. But, I just was coming in and calling out the fight. At that time, I was ranked number 2 in the WBO and ranked number 5 in the WBA. And, I was just top 10 in the world. And, I just thought, and I know it was been made to be an exciting fight. And at that time, I wasn't signed with Top Rank, so I was able to do that. I wasn't just doing anything at that point.
Yeah. And I want to talk about your career so far, just because, at what you are at right now, you're 18-0, 11 KOs, but you started boxing as a professional late. What led to that? Because I think, what were you, 26, 27 when you went pro?
Yeah, I was definitely older. Starting off, I never actually I never planned on turning professional. Actually, when I started, I never planned on even fighting in a fight until, I sparred my first guy, and I dropped him a few times and found out that he was boxing for a year. And that led me to start training and, have a fight that I sparred my first professional and did, extremely well against him. So I'm like, I might have an opportunity to make something happen. And nevertheless, I wasn't doing much but hanging in the streets, chilling, being idle with my time. And, it just led me to pursue a career in boxing. And, doors start opening up themselves for them, and I just continue to walk through.
Talk about the area of the country that you're from, the Bay Area, because it's a hotbed for fighters right now. Especially, you mentioned some of the guys, around the gym with Andre Ward and Amir Khan actually training out there. So how much pride do you have representing that area, one, where really good fighters, championship caliber fighters actually live, and international guys actually going there to train?
Well, it's definitely a good look, and I definitely have. I got mad love for the Bay. The Bay shows me a whole lot of support just as a fighter, just as a person overall, and for all the things that I do in the community. But going back to your question, being around these world-class fighters is you can't do anything but get better sparring these world-class guys, and just seeing the way that they, operate in the way that they train, it just inspires you to train harder, and you learn different other things. Whether if it's not in the ring, you learn different, maybe some different harder ab moves, maybe some different things to do on the bag, So it's all collective knowledge that I received from being around these world-class fighters, and like not to mention, like you said, I started, a professional around my late 20s, so I'm picking up a lot as I'm going.
Kareem, I see on the Top Rank bio that you're also interested in stand-up comedy. Can you kind of explain how you got into that? And is that a career that you're looking to do outside of boxing or after your career's over? How did the whole doing the stand-up comedy come about?
So that's a good question. Well, as me and my wife had actually, we joke around. We both are pretty humorous, and we're joking around, and like we're making some jokes, and then she sort of just she made a joke, and I made a joke as if we were an old couple. And we just started feeding off this old couple as if we were like 80 years old. And what an old couple will say. For instance, it was like, I said something like, well, you see that, like, for instance, you see like my little cousin. I'm like, damn, you see how tight my little cousin's pants was up? I'm like, damn, I can see his ID through his pants. I can see his credit card. No reason why I know why credit card theft is up. These young boys wearing these tight jeans. You know what I mean? And then she said something like, well, I can tell he was in love because I can see his heartbeat just how tight his shirt was. We just kind of started feeding off that, and we actually ended up coming together with a whole skit that lasted maybe about 20 minutes. It was hilarious through the whole skit, and we performed at a professional comedy show and got a standing ovation. And I mean, for the most part, it's not necessarily something I want to pursue. It's just, I come up with jokes, come up with things, and I just, we just said, hey, let's try it out, and we did well. We were successful with it, and actually made some pretty good money that night.
Kareem, I'm going to test your knowledge here a little bit. I'm a big Bay Area rap fan, so I'm going to give you some names. I'm going to give you some names, and you give me your favorite song by them. Let's go E40. Let's go the Godfather of the Bay there.
Okay. Let's see E40. Let's see. I hope I don't go back to slanging yayo. Slanging yayo. That's why I'm grinding hard, man, so I don't go back to doing nothing that I don't need to be doing.
I'll give you another one. Mac Dre.
Oh, man. Tears dance. Tears dance, man. I'm definitely a Bay Area man, and I show my support as well. They support me.
And my all-time favorite, I'll give you right now, Rappin' Forte Players Club. That's my favorite Bay Area song
yes. Yeah, it's funny. I was just rocking the show with Forte maybe a few nights ago. Rest in peace to Cool Nut. They did a commemoration. I think it's been several years since he's passed away. And, he called me on the stage and gave homage to all I've done in the community and all I've done just for the city overall in the Bay Area. So, Forte, shout out to Forte.
And Kareem, just for the people that that don't know you, how old are you when you started boxing as an Ami?
I think I started probably about 20 years old. About 2021, actually. I was about 2021, yes.
And what led you into it? I mean, were you just getting in street fights and ultimately, or was it just gym work, or what was it?
Well, I've never been like a troublemaker or whatever. I was mischievous, but I wasn't a troublemaker. I was mischievous as in doing things as in just things that adolescents do. But for the most part, people would call me. I would protect guys that was getting bullied on. So I was beating up. I would like beating up bullies, like people that was trying to bully people. I would find a reason to fight them. So like I was like protecting guys that was. I was protecting guys that was like way bigger than me. Like when I was in middle school and when I was in high school, for some reason I always had a heart for people. I don't want to say just like for soft people and like that, but people that really that couldn't protect themselves. And that's why I got a lot of different friends in different walks of life and different races or whatever. Because I was always cool with everybody, whatever race, creed, or color. But for the most part, I knew I could fight. And then I'm like, I would protect people or whatever. And, you know, it was a gym that opened up the street. It was a continuation school right up the street from my neighborhood, and my boy told me about it in Amor, and I said, hey, let me go check it out, man. And like I said, I told you earlier, I sparred the guy that I had that was boxing for a year. I didn't know at that time. I went in there, and they were telling me, oh, let me show you the jab. I'm like, no, let me fight. I didn't know about the word sparring. And he was like, okay, put him in there. And I did extremely well against him, and I just continued to, move forward.
That's amazing. Well, I mean, thank you for coming on. I mean, we'd love to have you back on. Again, March 29th on HBO, Kareem Mayfield takes on Thomas Delorme in the co-main event on HBO. Again, we'd love to have you on. This was fun, Kareem. If people want to reach you, where can they hit you up on Facebook, Instagram, all those social media?
Kareem Mayfield on Facebook and Kareem Hard Hitter Mayfield on Instagram. That's Kareem, Karim, Hard Hitter with an A, Mayfield. Man, I'm a cool guy. I'm well down to earth. You know, I'm conversate with you. Got any questions, young fighters? Got any questions, any suggestions? Get at me. I'm all good.
All right, hey, and if you win the 29th, I want you to do the Bird and the Bernie right after your victory, man.
Certainly. When I win, I'm going to be doing the Bird and the Bernie. Turn up.
All right, man. We'll pay attention for that. Thanks for joining us, Kareem. We'll keep in touch.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it.
All right, good night.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
That was worth the wait. That was a pretty damn good interview.
Phenomenal interview. We got to have him on again for more time. And this is a guy I think has a lot of star potential if, you know, everything goes according to plan here. A guy that knows how to promote himself. We talked so many times, Jorge, about creating stars in the sport of just combat sports and just how they don't really know how to promote themselves. This is a perfect example of how, you know, Kareem just knows how to promote himself, knows how to get attention without, you know, having to resort to just, you know, cheap tactics. It's being entertaining. And I think that's something that a lot of other fighters should take notice of.
And I completely agree. So I look forward to seeing him here at the end of the month. But definitely a fighter, especially an older fighter now is what quote unquote that we say. But he started his career late. I mean, this is Sergio Martinez type late of his career. So, you know, we'll definitely have to see how much longer he lasts. No doubt.
3 minutes remaining, man. So, of course, we got to discuss UFC Fight Night 37, Alexander Gustafsson versus Jimmy Minowa, a fight that really Gustafsson's been vocal as to his displeasure as to being placed on the UFC Fight Pass when he was involved in one of the greatest fights in the history of mixed martial arts. Now he's fighting on UFC Fight Pass in the middle of the day. Pretty entertaining main card for a Fight Pass card. Number one, prediction for the main event, pretty easy. But number two, more importantly, are you going to buy Fight Pass to see this card?
No. I just don't know. I mean, during the middle of the day, Jay, I'm not so certain there's going to be, especially during March Madness. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm going to watch those random small tournaments. I'm a big gambler when it comes to March Madness, so I'm going to keep an eye on some of these other tournaments. I may stream it here. It's possible that I might just catch that fight. I mean, $9.99, that's fine. I'll pay it once. But Alexander Gustafsson's right, though. I mean, it has to be sort of a slap in the face after putting on one of the greatest performances ever and then, you know, being shunned over to a pay-per-view on the internet, out of all places.
Yeah, agreed. Melvin Gillard's on this card fighting Michael Johnson. That should be a pretty entertaining fight. One Punch, Brad Pickett's on this card. I've always been a ride or die fan of Brad Pickett for a long time, ever since the Bodog fight days. Certainly he'll be entertaining. The card's going to be in the United Kingdom, so, you know, some good stuff on here. Anything to really be worth dropping the $9 for. But, you know, if you're bored on a Saturday afternoon, you might have some fun with this card. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, get you warmed up before those boxing pay-per-views tonight, or that same night.
No doubt. 1 minute remaining. So again, Fight Fans Radio, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Ustream. We're available on YouTube as well. Also follow us at The Low Blow and email us, lowblow505@gmail.com. So for Jorge Hernandez, I'm Justin Goodrum. We're listening to episode 181 of The Low Blow on Fight Fans Radio, SouthwestFight.com, and USCombatSports.com. We will see you next week. Have a good weekend.
Peace.